Hello, good morning everyone. I came from Singapore. I was in Colorado last week. I was playing with drones for 2 weeks. We flew over 20 drones and we played with some countermeasures, which was not that great, if I'm honest. But I'm going to introduce you to why are Interpol interested in drones. Interpol now has 194 countries that answer to us. So they come to us asking, how do we combat such issues as drones, as connected motor vehicles, stuff like that. And it's my job to try and help these 194 countries understand the truth from the legends. So policing is, almost 200 years old, and, they react to an incident. So when they do an investigation, it's because an incident has happened. Someone has been harmed, or there has been an incident that has threatened public safety, and they have to investigate, apprehend and convict, and then also create deterrence and control the crime. But in the modern world, cybercrime and connected crime is different. Because in a normal crime scene, it's limited scale, it has a proximity, and it has physical constraints, and it has a pattern. But when you're talking about modern crime, you're talking about crime with unlimited scale, there's no pattern, there's no physical constraints, and there is no proximity. All you have to do is look at cybercrime. Cybercrime has no borders. But we're talking about drones today, so we're not going to talk about cybercrime. So I'm not going to mention words like blockchain and stuff like that today. So no techno bullshit, as I like to call it. So the problem with drones is we have member countries that are facing a challenge with drones every day, not for good, but for bad. So when you're talking about countries like Syria and Iraq, who are members of our group, their soldiers are facing a challenge every day. They don't just look ahead, they have to look up as well. Why do they have to look up? Because the enemy are using drones to cause harm on them. And they use very simple techniques, really. They just use a drone, they re-engineer the landing lights of the drone, and basically switch the lights off, connect a servo motor to that circuit, and then they connect a grenade to that circuit. They fly above the Allied forces or whoever, and as soon as they see their target, they switch the lights on the drone on, servo motor kicks in, the grenade drops to the ground and causes death or injury. It's that simple. If you want to know how to do it, just go on YouTube. It's that simple. Just go on YouTube. YouTube is the criminal's playground. You don't need to get onto the deep net or the dark net. Just go on YouTube. It will teach you everything you need to know to be a criminal. Airports are also facing a problem. There's always at least a few headlines every week around a near miss of a plane and a drone and stuff like that. And we've all seen the amazing video of someone firing a drone into a plane wing. And it looks sensational. But we have already seen in certain airports people using drones. So an example is there was a Russian at an airport who was delayed by about 6 hours, and he had a drone in his backpack, so he decided to fly the drone at the airport because he wanted to get a picture of the planes taking off. So he switched the drone on. The problem is the drone was from Russia, he was in another country, so the no-fly zone database that was on the drone wasn't conclusive. So it allowed him to take the drone off and fly it to the middle of the airport, to the middle of the runway where planes were taking off. He actually delayed people for about 4 or 5 hours as the police wrestled to try and get that drone out of the air and apprehend the suspect. So my thing is, don't get hypnotized by technology. Drones are very simple in terms of criminal uses. So there's many different types of drones. I mean, I've been fortunate enough over the last 2 weeks to fly all those drones. I think the most fun I had was with the fixed-wing drone. If you've never flown a fixed-wing drone, have a go. It's the most intriguing way of flying a drone ever because it's completely different to the propeller type drones, and it's a real challenge. I crashed 6 of them. So I did very well. So don't ever ask me to fly a drone because it probably hit the nearest object. So I ain't a great flyer, but I have crashed many a drone. I've broken 2 DJI drones myself. Not intentionally, but that's just how things happen. Obviously, we're aware of the Venezuela attack, where 2 drones loaded with explosives tried to carry out an attempted assassination plot, so we won't go over that. And then also criminals such as terrorists, smugglers into prisons, and voyeurs and stuff are using drones to ply their crime. I mean, it's just crazy. In UK, let me go there. So let's just see if this plays. So you imagine if this isn't an ammo dump, but a public gathering somewhere in Europe. Can you imagine what could happen? Can you imagine the loss of life and the craziness that will ensue after this happens? And these are homemade bombs, which they're made themselves, so you can't buy them on eBay or anything, but you can download the manuals on how to manufacture these bombs. So you imagine at some point in Europe, if there's a massive gathering, and someone with a drone with ammunition flies over and drops a bomb in the middle of the crowd. Even worse, imagine if they use a crop sprayer with chemical weapons in it, and they spray it above a stadium. How many people may suffer? Up to 10,000 people may suffer because of that kind of effort. These examples of drones that are being discovered. Obviously, you have the off-the-shelf drones down in the bottom there with grenades strapped to it, but then you have these homemade kits by ISIS, which are called turtle drones, and they can fly for 2-3 hours. Basically, it's a balsa wood kit with the controllers and stuff. They basically can construct them in about an hour, and then they can fly them. And they fly them across Syria and Iraq a lot, and that one was actually found in Turkey because it lost its GPS signal and ended up in Turkey. So we're coming across these more and more. So not just the off-the-shelf stuff, but the homemade drones as well. And then also, everyone talks about terrorism, but there's an interesting new concept, cybercrime using a drone. How can you create cybercrime using a drone? Quite easily, you put a Wi-Fi pineapple which hacks Wi-Fi networks connected to the drone. Just stick it in the drone, fly it above a bank or an interested target you're trying to find an air gap in, and then use that Wi-Fi pineapple to find the vulnerability in the Wi-Fi network. It's that simple. You can be a master cyber criminal with a drone now. So if you want to know how to make one, just go to hack5.com, and they give you a whole plan of how you build one and how you use the scripts and stuff. It's not that difficult. Even I've done this. But I've never used it. It's interesting when you use it because it tells you every single Wi-Fi device in the area, and it also shows you vulnerabilities. And if you're naughty, you can download all their photos and contact and address books if you really want to. Not that I've done that. And also, protesters are using drones. So in France, for some reason, Greenpeace used drones to fly into nuclear power stations, and they even dressed one drone up as Superman. And they flew it into the atomic energy plant, and it actually crashed into a wall and downed. They actually did 2, but we have evidence that drones are being used to scan critical infrastructure. So for some reason, criminals or other parties are using drones to do reconnaissance surveys of areas of interest and targets. An example in Australia is some criminals used drones to scout out the houses they were going to burgle, and they flew the drone and waited for the people to leave the house. As soon as they saw the people leave the house, using the drone, they then drove in and stole stuff out of the house. This is an example of UK. So this was one of the reasons why we got involved in the drone problem. Someone attaches a bag of booty to the bottom of a drone, use a piece of string, they fly it into the prison system. Someone with a big stick, that's the best weapon you can ever have against a drone, is a big stick, by the way. Someone uses a big stick to then bring the booty into the prison system. And this is an example of some of the stuff that they're shipping into the prison systems, mostly mobile phone, narcotics and tobacco. The problem is, you say, well, what's the problem? Well, as soon as they distribute those drugs into the prison system, the prisoners all like to have a good time, and then they end up having a good riot as well. So it caused a huge problem in the UK over the last 2 years. We've actually arrested about 8 or 9 gangs involved in this, and they've all received prison sentences up to 10 years. And suddenly the use of drones in the prison system in the UK has dramatically dropped. I think it's because no one wants to spend 10 years in prison just for using a drone. And let's talk about countermeasures, because no drone presentation can go without countermeasure discussion. The Dutch used eagles, but the problem was no one wanted to look after the eagles. They were happy to look after a police dog, but I don't think they wanted an eagle in the corner of the living room in the evening So that project was a success, but they couldn't continue it because the cost of looking after the birds, and also the birds were a bit temperamental depending on the weather. Because it was too sunny, they didn't want to fly, and if it was rainy or snowy, they didn't want to fly either. Also, they had to be in the proximity of the incident of the drone, which is also a problem. Everyone loves a good drone gun. Yeah, drone guns are great. Maybe. I've used a few. I've not been that impressed. I'm more worried about the health benefit, the health disadvantages for me. Really, you know, if I'm emitting all that radio frequency out of that drone gun, what's it doing to my cells inside me? We used one in Colorado last week. It was meant to have a 30-degree path. It actually had a 360-degree path. And it was unfortunate because there was a drone flying behind and it crashed into the ground, and it was a $10,000 drone. So we weren't too happy with that one. We won't be using that drone gun again. We also have drones with nets. Great. But the best thing we've seen is shotgun shells with fishing line in. So basically in US we come across these shotgun shells with just 2 lead weights and a fishing line between the 2 lead weights. You put it into a shotgun, you fire the fishing line out, and hopefully you'll hit the drone. And they only cost $20 a bullet. But if you want to really spend money, you can buy drone nets and bullets, which cost you $1,200 a bullet. I know which one I would choose, and I think I know which one is more effective. But I leave it up to you, because I have to be very impartial. And obviously police are using drones. There's a lot of debate around which drones should be used and why, and what are the drones sending back to the companies and stuff. We don't get involved in this issue. We have to be very politically neutral. But we are seeing police are using drones more and more. The problem is countries don't have process or legislation or procedures in place to use drones properly. So we're going to start and embark on creating a global guidelines for police use of drones. Just as a guideline, we're not going to enforce it. It's up to countries whether they want to use it or not. And obviously, everyone knows the multiple uses of drones for good. Obviously, with the fires in California, they're using drones a lot now for surveying the damage, and they're using a lot of AI and machine processing. This is going to increase more and more. As time goes on, post-processing of images, we've even seen a drone with a camera with some AI on it that can predict which way a suspect's going to run before he even turns. So the drone films a suspect and it will tell you whether the person's going to turn left or right 5 to 10 seconds before he turns left or right. That's amazing. If you ever see the video, it's amazing to watch. It's very interesting. We're actually talking to the people who are making that system to understand more of how that can be used for policing. So what about the future? The future for drones is good, and it's also bad. Legislation is a huge issue because there's only around 49 to 80 countries that have legislation for drones at the moment. Obviously, homebrew drones that are made at home, becoming more and more popular because they're becoming more and more cheaper. The use of autonomy in drones is becoming more and more prevalent. An example is there's loads of videos on YouTube where you can strap a mobile hotspot to a drone and you can control it using SIM cards. So imagine instead of you can place a drone on top of a building and then you can move 100 miles away and control it from 100 miles away using the modem. And that brings us on nicely to 5G. 5G is going to be the biggest challenge you will face. Why is that? Because there's a lot of talk about embedding SIMs in drones as a security measure so that the phone networks can monitor the drone movements. But if I was a criminal, I would just take the embedded SIM out, either re-engineer it or not even have it, and then just strap a 5G modem to it and use the 5G modem to stream video and to stream the telematics from the drone and let me control it from, you know, another country somewhere. And this is my biggest concern is 5G, is we need to prepare to understand what's going to happen when people use 5G in drones. How are you going to detect a drone moving across a 5G network? Because you're not going to jam a 5G network. So that's an interesting challenge, and that's an open invitation to everyone to start thinking, how can we sort this out? And drone swarms is also another problem. At the moment, you're just having scenarios where there's maybe 1 or 2 drones in an attack, but imagine if there's 8 or 80 drones in an attack. How are you going to stop 80 drones massing on a target? You're not at this moment in time. Not unless you jam frequencies, but there's a lot of legislation in place to stop you jamming frequencies. And at the moment, law enforcement cannot interfere with a drone in flight because it's an aviation regulation. And even in the US, if someone tries to shoot a drone down and they're a police officer, they could face 2 years in jail for shooting a drone down in flight. And there's no silver bullet in any solution. I was in a presentation with some drone countermeasures last night, and they were saying you need about 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 different solutions to combat the drone issue. That's very expensive, and not many countries and people can afford to spend money on 4 or 5 different drone countermeasure issues. I'm interested in the forensics of drones, so I do a lot of work of stripping drones down, finding where the information is, and understanding what the information is telling me. Criminals have this nice habit of buying a drone, taking it home, switching it on at home, and just checking the camera works and take a picture of themselves in their own home. So generally, when a police officer gets a drone and they ask us to download it, the first home location will be the suspect's home address. And there's generally a nice picture of them in their living room, having a cigarette, watching TV as well, which is always great. I'm stereotyping, I'm sorry, but it's true. I've got 40 seconds left. So we work with a lot of forensic companies. We work with anti-terrorist police in UK, with Homeland Security and the FBI in the US. We are open to collaborate with industry and with people to try and solve the problem. We don't have the solution, but with a collaborative effort, we will find a solution. We host meetings, so we had this one in France, this one in Singapore this year, which had 95 participants from 35 countries. They actually told us, can you create some global guidelines on drone as a threat? So let me go here, that's us in Colorado, and then let's go here. And this is our simple model. This is our simple model, so anyone who doesn't know about drones can understand the tool, the threat, the evidence. I'm working on the tool side and the evidence side, and I have someone else working on the threat side. So in the evidence side, we're going to look at the forensic recovery of drone data, produce some SOPs and guidelines, and also help with the data processing and analysis. And in the tool side, we're going to understand the usage by law enforcement, the implications and the challenges and limitations that they face in drones. And remember, there is always a way. No matter what happens, there is always a way. So if someone says it can't be done, it can be done. You just need to have the right people in the room. And hopefully there's some good people in this room today. Thank you very much for your time. I've overgone my time. Thank you very much.